Day 2 in the books for Notre Dame football, 2 of 4 consecutive days of practice, including an evening session scheduled for Sunday, 4 weeks before Notre Dame kicks off its 2025 season at Miami. This is Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis. To my left, the Dean, Tim Prister. To my right, Andrew Mentock. Tim, let's start with you. Saw a little bit of practice today, a lot of interviews today. Just what were some of the early highlights for you that stand out?
Yeah, I'll try not to talk too much because we did have an opportunity to speak to the players and Gino Guidugli and Mike Denbrock. But out on the practice field, Drew and I both saw this. The whole team is flexing, and C.J. Carr is off on the field next to it, getting warmed up. We talked to him about it. He just said, he's antsy. He wants to get going. And Gino Guidugli says, hey, if that's what you want to do, get yourself prepared for practice, go ahead. But, the two quarterbacks, C.J. Carr and Kenny Minchey, were there. I asked C.J. Carr what's like throwing against Kyle Hamilton, better known as Tay Johnson. And, and he did. And this is true, but, you have to put it in perspective. Other than the 4 plays, the two quarterbacks played quite well yesterday. But that's a big other, and you can't have that. And Kenny Minchey is confident that he's not only the best quarterback on the team, but the best quarterback in the country. That's what he says. He tells himself. So it's a competition because Mike Denbrock said there's absolutely no reason that Kenny Minchey can't win the starting job.
Yeah, and C.J. Carr should be noted on the side there, throwing with a purpose. Like you watch him, he's not just slinging the ball around. He's working on specific things. He's faking the handoff. He's keeping his eyes downfield and then finding the manager that's warming up with him. Drew, you noticed another incredible moment on the practice field off to the side with the offensive line. I wonder, what did you see today out of Charles Jagasaw?
Yeah, I saw him. He had was working with 3 or 4 offensive linemen at the time, offensive guards specifically, and they were kind of working on drills with a sled, then hitting the sled, and then moving upfield a little bit. But Jagasaw was really engaged for those 2 periods, and there was no other coaches around him. It was just him working with these offensive linemen, which include Billy Strouth and some other guys. Sullivan Absher, so guys who were going to play, and he was coaching them hard. He was giving them feedback about their stance. They were getting a little too wide. He wanted them to get a little more vertical with their stance, things like that. That was the feedback he was giving them, and he wasn't relenting. If they made the same mistake twice, he was letting them have it. And I talked to Coach Denbrock after about that too, and he's like, that's who Charles is. Like, we see the traits that make him special, but he's like, that's why he's a good football player. That's why he's able to come back at the end of last year and do what he did in the playoffs, because he stays engaged and he's really paying attention to the details despite being out right now.
You both spent more time around the offense today. I tried to study Al Washington, particularly in that defensive line. Saw some interesting things there. They're already doing some stems and stunts, even though they're not in gear. But I did want to ask both of you, start with you, Drew. What did you see from the quarterbacks today? I know you noticed C.J. Carr warming up early, but as we saw 25 or so minutes of practice today. What stood out to you just in that limited viewing on the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think I didn't watch them as much during practice, kind of first with C.J. Carr going. But I do think in the interviews, I thought something Coach Guidugli mentioned that really stood out is he said Kenny Minchey's heart rate never changes. Like, he's a guy who's always cool, doesn't overreact to anything. And I think that's we kind of say all these really positive things about C.J. Carr, but that's obviously a really important trait for a quarterback too. And ask Kenny about that as well. And he's just like, that's just how I am. Like, I know the person I want to be, and I don't need to get too wrapped up in all these other things. Like, just kind of stay the mission. So I thought that was one of the most interesting insights I got today.
TP?
I saw them. I don't think I've ever seen this specific drill. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys can tell me. But the quarterbacks were throwing just flat streak passes to the wideouts where the, ball is snapped, the wideout sprints downfield, and you try to hit him in stride. I thought, for what it's worth, I thought C.J. Carr's a little bit more natural at that. The ball comes out of his hands so easily that he can get length, he can get distance without really trying. I thought he was a little bit more accurate with that. The other thing I noticed that, on the offensive side of the ball, the running backs, that is the most physically prepared running back, the entire group that I've ever seen in Notre Dame. Now, that's the evolution of man. It's 2025, and I can go back to 1982, and obviously guys are bigger and stronger, but Kedron Young is monstrous. He looks, he's kind of like a Audric Estime. I think Estime's probably a little bit taller than him, but built along those lines. And you can, we saw Jadarian Price yesterday. Jeremiah Love's in fantastic condition. It trickles down even to Jake Tefelsky, a walk-on who's listed at 206. I looked at it, I was surprised to see that because I thought he looked bigger than that. So, this is we all know that Notre Dame has an elite group of running backs. I think their bodies match their skill set.
And again, we are through 2 days of Notre Dame's preseason camp, 2 more consecutive days for the Irish. We'll be back out with some more interviews, but I do find it interesting that it's day 2 of 4 consecutive. I find it interesting they're going to go Sunday evening as they start, acclimating to when they'll kick the season off. And they'll kick the season off on a Sunday night. I wanted to talk to both of you guys. I referenced this earlier about the defensive line depth. We talked about it yesterday. I talked yesterday about the wide receiver depth. I think I counted 15 bodies in that unit yesterday. But obviously, Tim, none of us has covered it as long as you. But Drew, you've been around the program now 6 or 7 years. What stands out to you about the quality of depth, or maybe that's what stands out to you about the depth in this Notre Dame program right now?
Well, I love the starting 4. We know who those guys are, and I think Malachi Field showed us in his first appearance to the media yesterday that he's a big-time player. But Greathouse, I think Greathouse, I think his cuts, his moves are sharper and quicker than before. They should be. He's a junior now. He's growing up, but Faison and Will Pauling. I think I mentioned it yesterday, but I thought the comments by Marcus Freeman about Will Pauling yesterday were very telling. He loves him. He says he's a yes, sir, no, sir kind of guy. And again, I think he's a volume receiver that when it's 3rd and 4, you can run the ball with Jeremiah Love, but you can throw it to Will Pauling and keep moving the chain. So, I believe Elijah Burris is going to be in the mix. I thought we saw some good things from him yesterday. And, Micah Gilbert had a big play with C.J. Carr yesterday, breaking to the sideline. They need Micah Gilbert to step up, and I think that he is.
And again, we've touched on that wide receiver depth yesterday and today, but it's not just there. It is that defensive line depth. I thought I noticed it today in the secondary as well. Obviously, we heard Marcus Freeman, who knows more than all of us combined, talk about the depth of the offensive line and how quality and talented it is. Drew, as you're walking the field yesterday and today, what stands out to you just overall about the depth on this Notre Dame roster?
Yeah, I think it. I think we've said it before, but it is the deepest team I've seen since I've been covering it, and from top to bottom. And I think it's important too that you have a lot of young guys who they add things, even if they have talents or skill sets, whether it's Tay Johnson just being like a freak athlete, that make you want to get those guys on the field and earn reps. And I think that's really important too. It's not just guys like, well, he's steady or he's kind of closer to his ceiling, and that's why they're getting in. They have guys that have really important traits, and I think we saw that last year, that gets them on the field. That gets a Bryce Young on the field. You have to get those guys involved when you can, and I think that's showing each and every year.
Yeah, and it's early again. I spent some time around the defensive line today, the opening 8, so to speak. Jen, this was just drills. This was not team. But you had Donovan Hinish, you had Joshua Burnham, you had Boubacar Traore, you had Junior Tuihalamaka. The second wave of 4 included Gabriel Rubio, Jason Onye, Logan Thomas, and Bryce Young. That's a lot of tremendous depth along that defensive line. You still want 9, 10, and 11, 12 guys to show up, but that opening 8 is really pretty strong for the Irish. Tim, before we wrap it up, any final thoughts for today?
Yeah, Ty Washington, I think I want you to share your thoughts with Ty Washington because we both talked to him, and he's adamant that you guys haven't seen what I can do, and I will agree because I didn't think he blew me away yesterday physically. There was one time where a C.J. Carr threw him a pass, and C.J. kind of like directed him after it because he didn't break on the ball or didn't widen the way he wanted him to. But I want you to tell your story about Ty Washington, talking about his days at Arkansas and his experience so far with Lauren Lando at Notre Dame.
I'm glad you brought that up. I had meant to use that nugget yesterday. I thought that was incredible for C.J. Carr, the redshirt freshman, the opening day of practice, to be directing the 4th-year guy who's a transfer from the SEC. But he wasn't pleased with Washington cutting that route off too short, going toward the sideline, and the ball sailed incomplete and looked like a bad throw, but it was really more of just a busted play, not being on the same page. I asked Ty Washington, as I continue to try to develop a story about the impact of having Lauren Lando for a second consecutive year, the first time that Marcus Freeman will take the same strength and conditioning coach definitely into the second season. And I asked Ty Washington, I said, look, you've been in the SEC, you've been around big-time football, you've been through college strength and conditioning programs for 3 years before. What stands out to you about Lauren Lando's program? He goes, well, he actually cares about us. He's not just trying to kill us. So I'll get you the exact quote. It'll be transcribed in a story that'll come either on FootballScoop or Irish Illustrated, but you'll get the quote. You'll have access to the quote. But I thought that was pretty telling. James Flanagan, obviously just a freshman, but he noted that he feels like it's very specialized for the tight ends in each individual position. He said they have a position group liaison that works with them in the weight room. I found that very interesting. So we've spent enough of your time on this Friday afternoon, but if you need more, there's plenty of more on Irish Illustrated on 247 Sports. For Drew Mentock and the Dean, Tim Prister, I'm John Brice. This has been Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis.